In the first two episodes of Everything Wrong With, a shared theme between Cassante and Akshan is their hybridization. I call that to attention in great detail because all too often, in the spirit of keeping their game as innovative as possible, developers fall into the trap of, oh, what if we did this, or what if we did that, and get a little too ambitious. Basically, they get too carried away in the pursuit of something new and inventive that they overstep boundaries that should never be crossed, ever. And hybridization is one of them. The point of a class system is to establish recognizable limitations in a champion, both for their sake and those who play against them. Another champion who is the unfortunate byproduct of Riot's habit of breaking their own rules is Pyke, the first officially designated carry support in League of Legends. Infamous for being the hardest role to carry through, especially at lower elos, the champion design team thought it wise to add a few members to the roster capable of exerting enough pressure to influence the outcome of the game in a more proactive, self-serving way. While carry supports have existed prior to him, such as Zyra, Vel'Koz, and whatnot, they were once mages who instead became supports through circumstance, whereas Pyke was the first champion who was intended to be a support from the get-go. Keyword intended. Since then, he's had to deal with the literal crippling balance timeline that serves to highlight why those aforementioned boundaries are there in the first place. So for today's video, we'll be talking about everything wrong with Pyke, the Bloodharbor Ripper. While this episode will share much of the same overall premise as Cassante and Akshan's, I don't think anyone considers Pyke to be as ridiculous as them. In fact, his kit is relatively straightforward all things considered. However, the player base had half a mind to categorize him as such, in light of how drastically he could skew the game in his team's favor just by being present. So in a way, it's not what he had that made him such a problem, but rather how that would affect the progression of a game. Pyke's a hybrid between a catcher and assassin. True to their name, catchers excel at locking down and/or isolating targets from their team, making them the best at searching for picks. Coincidentally, that overlaps nicely with the assassin class, whose job is also to single out an isolated target and dispatch them quickly. So compared to antithetical pairings like marksman and assassin, or warden and skirmisher, catcher and assassin get along rather well. What differentiates Pyke from other catchers like Blitzcrank or Nautilus is that he actually has damage of his own, sacrificing durability and area coverage in the process. Given that he scales off attack damage and lethality, his auto attacks and damaging abilities do hurt quite a bit, so when being reeled in by a Pyke, you not only have to be concerned about his teammates standing next to him, but he himself, especially when we get to his ultimate. Even without death from below though, Pyke has a very solid damage combo that can double as an escape. Bone Skewer in tandem with Phantom Undertow equates to 565 base plus 160% bonus AD and damage, not to mention the stun that follows. Couple that with a few auto attacks thrown in and he can chunk you down pretty good on his own. He doesn't exactly one-shot you like a conventional assassin, but for a support he definitely has more kill pressure than his peers. Pyke takes advantage of the assassin part of his identity by being arguably one of the most difficult champions to catch. Ghost Water Dive allows him a short-lived yet extremely fast burst of speed coupled with camouflage, which can be used for both running away and closing in on a target. Phantom Undertow is also one of the best dash abilities in the entire game in my opinion, being a fast, free target dash with a delayed stun attached to it. Naturally, it's best used when attacking, but it's incredibly useful for shaking off fleeing enemies, since pursuers have to worry about the Phantom stunning them on the way back to Pyke. Compared to your usual catcher supports, who are ironically easy to catch out themselves, Pyke is able to get out of a tricky situation if he finds himself stuck in one, which is one of the less talked about aspects of what makes him so frustrating to deal with whenever he is strong. Of course, the biggest contributing factor that grinds people's gears is his infamous ultimate, Death from Below. Marking an X shape in front of him, he dishes out heavy damage to all targets caught in it, instantly executing champions below a certain HP threshold regardless of how much armor, how many shields, if Pyke is exhausted, what have you. If someone dies within that time frame, he blinks to their location and resets the ability, being able to cast it again within 20 seconds at no cost. In addition, rather than gaining the normal assist gold, his allies are instead granted the same amount of gold they would have gotten if it was an actual kill. Hypothetically, if Pyke scored a kill, he would get 300 gold while 150 would be split among any teammate who assisted in said kill. But through Death from Below, he would get 300 gold while the last assisting ally would also get 300 for a net positive of 150. At least, that's how it is now, but for the longest time ever, the net positive would actually be 450 gold because Pyke would be awarded the kill gold for actually killing the champion and the bag of gold that came with it. So he would get 300 gold plus the bag for another 300, while one of his teammates got 300 gold for a total of 900. Yeah, double the gold essentially. And this was attached to a resettable AoE dash execute. A single triple kill from Pyke's ultimate awarded so much gold to himself that it wouldn't be unusual for him to reach full build and entire item before anyone else, given adequate performance. On paper, I can totally understand why this condition was added. Supports are generally not meant to get kills, nor are they intended to last at any minions, as that should go too, and is put to better use by their teammates. That being said, assassins are among the most gold-hungry classes in the game. They heavily depend on items to offset their poor neutral game and low durability. Being part assassin, Pyke is intrinsically dependent on gold to achieve his job. The point of your cut is to allow a win-win scenario where Pyke is able to amass a heavy sum of gold without compromising his teammates' ability to do so as well. The issue with your cut though was that it snowballed on itself really hard. Prior to version 12.9, you were essentially getting up to 3 times the amount of gold per champion killed through Pyke than if you were to kill someone the normal way. Not counting the reduced gold from negative bounties, the max amount of gold the team could acquire by killing all 5 members of the enemy team was 450 times 5 for a total of 2250. With Pyke, that total went up to 4500. Moreover, 3,000 of that was condensed into him, roughly the cost of a full item. Purchasing that item dramatically increased the execution floor of death from below, further increasing the likelihood of even more double gold drops in the near future. A fed Pyke could accelerate his team's gold lead at such a high rate that a team with him included would have a 12 to 15,000 gold lead as opposed to a team without him having only about 8 to 10,000. And this was all while being a support. Assassins are already very snowbally, and Pyke could snowball twice as fast as a conventional assassin. The fundamental trade-off of playing a carry support is that they will inevitably siphon resources away from their teammates to fuel their own agenda, with the hope that said divergence would produce a net positive outcome for the team, an investment that fails more often than succeeds, which is why carry supports are frowned upon by most people down in bot. They provide no benefit for the team other than damage, but to acquire high amounts of damage, they have to steal resources, namely kills, from the rest of their team. Pyke was effectively the only carry support who could have the best of both worlds. It didn't matter how many times he KS'd with his ultimate, you would get the full kill gold anyway. That was the biggest downside of his kit. He was a hybrid between a catcher and an assassin, giving him some of the best kill pressure in the entire game from a theoretical standpoint. One way to stop assassins from getting the drop on you is to swim with a buddy. Catchers specialize in yanking you away from the positional safety of your team. So when you combine a catcher's ability to forcibly single out isolated targets with an assassin's ability to effortlessly kill isolated targets, that alone makes for a dangerous pairing. But then accounting for Pyke's extra reward factor, and you get someone who can snowball faster than anyone else in all of League of Legends, and this was all in someone who was fundamentally designed to be a support. Despite his intended purpose though, Pyke was given roughly the same independent stat line as a non-support champion, not to mention as an assassin he's functionally meant to be more combat independent than a tank or enchanter. It bears repeating that under no circumstances does he ever match a full-fledged assassin blow for blow since half of his kit is allocated to being a catcher, but even so, he's afforded enough concessions to at the very least pose a threat to mages and marksmen even if he's flying solo, as if that weren't the case that would defeat the purpose of him being an assassin. No matter how diminished, he should still be able to solo kill or at least threaten the lives of isolated targets to some capacity. Following that thought process ultimately backfired though. Since Pyke had enough self-sustainability to survive with or without the help of his teammates, that's what enabled him to moonlight as a mid laner, giving rise to the contentious Pyke mid, one of the biggest design oversights I've ever seen in League's history. In my Akshan video, I mentioned how assassins are kept in check by their lousy neutral game, which is why they tend to struggle in laning phase where they don't have the speed, cooldowns, and burst potential to disregard neutral and go straight for the kill. Gift of the Drowned Ones prevented Pyke from gaining any bonus health except through growth. But in exchange, he could passively regenerate a huge portion of health loss when not visible to enemies, so if you just took a lot of damage from your lane opponent, all you had to do was back away for a couple of seconds and bam, you recover a good half of it. This was originally intended to help him survive 2v2 bot lane, where you'd naturally be taking a lot of poke damage from the enemy ADC and support, but it was even more effective in mid lane where you only had one target to worry about. Plus, given that it was a solo lane, the enemy mid laner had no support to count on to either body block his skewer or peel him off of them when he went in, making it ironically easier for him to score kills. While in mid lane, he would gain better access to the rest of the map, taking advantage of Ghostwater dive to quickly traverse it, leading to another design oversight. Generally, engaged supports like Alistar, Blitzcrank, and Thresh prefer to roam around the map looking for ganks, attributing to their kits being quite efficient at doing so, but they don't have the luxury of roaming around the entire map freely for 3 reasons. 1. They're rather slow in tempo, which is why they buy Moby boots to compensate. 2. Few marksmen can 1v2 bot lane without hemorrhaging resources and losing priority. Neglect them for too long and it will cost your team dearly. 3. By roaming, you forfeit a lot of golden experience since you're not in lane very often. Supports may not need golden experience as much as other champions, but they still do need some. If you spend too much time roaming, unless you pull off several successful ganks, you will fall behind in the long run. Pyke circumvents all 3 reasons. 1. He's very fast in tempo, one of the fastest in the game. 2. He can, or at least he used to be able to go to mid lane, so he didn't have to compromise his teammates' own progression just to do what he wanted to do, coupled with the fact that he could return back to mid lane just as quickly as he left it. And 3. Since he could score so much extra gold through death from below, the cost of abandoning lane wasn't nearly as high for him as it was for everyone else. And let's not forget, he had way more solo kill pressure than a Blitzcrank or Alistar. All of these factors made it so he was actually better at being a solo laner than a support. His ultimate made scoring kills not only easy but more rewarding, and his passive Q, W, and E were excellent at putting himself in or setting up scenarios where he could make it happen. He was sort of like Katarina, where it didn't matter how much you bullied him in lane. All he needed was a single good roam and like a triple kill to terrorize mid to late game like no tomorrow. Due to this, the balance team had to bend over backwards to force him out of mid lane and back to bot lane. Gifted the Drawn Ones received a condition where to recover most of the lost health, you had to be near more than one enemy, obviously implying bot lane where you're usually facing two opponents at once. Bone's Gear Stab version lost the ability to hit multiple enemies, making it a purely single target attack whether used as a hook or stab, and therefore incredibly inefficient at wave clear. It was also given a hefty mana cost, but with the caveat that said mana cost would be refunded if he struck an enemy champion, once again implying that they wanted to make it so using it for wave clear would be incredibly inefficient. They also made it so Phantom Undertow could only damage champions. Against minions and monsters, it would only stun, annihilating all forms of wave clear from Pyke's kit to heavily discourage people bringing him mid lane. They had to slap on so many restrictions to the champion just to force him into being exclusively a support. Surprisingly, or unsurprisingly depending on who you ask, even with all of that, players still found success with him in mid lane because of one simple thing: death from below. Remember, if Pyke executed the target with his ultimate, not only would he score a kill, but he would get a bag of gold to go along with it, whether assisted or not, effectively making it so every kill he got with ultimate would at minimum be a double kill by default. So 3-0 Pyke would be more like a 6-0 in terms of gold. Not only that, but even if his jungler or someone else accidentally KS'd the mid-ultimate cast, the total gold awarded would still be 900 when it should normally be 450. So Pyke mid laners would zero in on getting 1 or 2 kills of death from below and then abandon mid lane entirely to start snowballing all over the map. So after years and years of letting him get away with it, Riot eventually caught on to the fact that it makes no sense for a Pyke to get a bag of kill gold with his ultimate if he scores the kill, because he would get the gold from the kill itself. Yes, would you believe me if I told you that this entire godforsaken time, the triple gold draw thing with his ultimate was unintentional? For 4 years, it completely flew over their head that Pyke doesn't need a bag of gold if he scores a kill, since he would get the kill gold anyway. So in 12.9, they made it so if he got the kill, he wouldn't give himself 2 kills worth of gold and instead get credited for just 1, which not only lessened his overall profitability, but made it so solo killing with him was no better than solo killing with any other champion, finally shutting down mid Pyke once and for all. Additionally, he would only get 1 bag from ultimate assists instead of 2. That was also a funny interaction. If he used death from below on a target who died before the attack finished, it would still register as a successful kill, awarding him his original bag of gold, but since he was technically the last assisting ally, he would also get the assist bag of gold while his teammate would get the kill gold, meaning whether his ultimate connected or missed, his team would get 3 kills of gold no matter what, and they let that slide for 4 years. Basically, Pyke is an excellently well-designed hybrid between a catcher and assassin, which is exactly why he was such a problem. He was so good at his job that it was almost impossible for him to perform at a healthy and reasonable level as a support. At the same time, being a support who could build carry items gave him the benefits of being a carry champion while still being able to quote-unquote support his team through picks and extra gold. So he was stuck in a catch-22 where he was a degenerate mid laner and a degenerate support. His design was so efficient that he turned into an always weak champion similar to Azir or Ryze, where the only way to keep them healthy is by keeping them constantly weak or unviable, since even the slightest concession would skyrocket them to pick ban OP. I think a lot of that has to do with him being a double offensive hybrid. Senna, for example, is a marksman, an offensive class, and Enchanter, a defensive class, making her a little more healthily designed as a carry support than Pyke, whose catcher assassin hybrid is double offensive, where he supports through killing people instead of healing or shielding his team. Overall though, while I don't think Pyke's catcher assassin hybridization is as bad as Akshan's marksman assassin or Kasante's warden skirmisher, because Riot wanted Pyke as a support, that's what made the catcher assassin hybrid a problem. If he was designed as a mid or jungle champion from the get-go, he would have been fine, but the words assassin and support aren't ever meant to mingle together. What do you guys think? Do you believe there's a timeline where Pyke can work as a support, or is he just so contradictory from a design standpoint that he will never be in a healthy position? Feel free to share in the comments down below. For now, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars and join my Discord server, and check out my other Everything Wrong With episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.